Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. There's been a bit of a change in what the most profitable divination card to farm is in patch 3.25. Now, I'm not really going to recommend divination card farming as a strategy, but if you are determined to pursue it, instead of target farming the Apothecary, which has been the best divination card to target farm for pretty much forever in Path of Exile, pretty much since it was introduced, this has been the best divination card to farm. This league, we have something new. Now, we know a lot about the drop rates of divination cards, and I'll put a link up in the bottom left corner of the screen for the last 20 seconds of this video as to how we worked all of that out. But the key thing is that there is a divination card a little bit rarer than the Apothecary that's worth quite a bit more. That is Father's Love. Now, this divination card appears to have a drop rate of 5 compared to 9 for the Apothecary. And to give it a bit of a sense as to what those numbers mean, we believe the Fortunate to be 1800. So where the Apothecary is about 200 times as rare as the Fortunate, Father's Love is 360 times as rare as the Fortunate. In short, you're very often not going to see it. Now, you might be wondering why a divination card that can give you a jewel that on PoE.Ninja is only 1 or 2 divines is worth anything like that at all. Well, Sublime Vision is a lot like the Watcher's Eye, in that there's a lot of different versions of it. And one of these versions is worth a fortune. The Purity of Fire version of Sublime Vision was indirectly buffed by patch 3.25. It has a text 30% of cold and lightning damage taken as fire damage when you were affected by Purity of Fire. It also has some other mods on it, and they put severe restrictions on the sort of build that you can run it with. You cannot run other auras other than Purity of Fire. However, in exchange for this, your Purity of Fire gets 40% increased strength. It's actually 20 to 40%, but at the price of this jewel, the cost of divining it an average of 21 times is negligible. And then this jewel is then going to provide you with a whole bunch of extra defense against cold and lightning damage. But why does that matter? Well, you can get more of this stat. You can use the Timeless Jewel to get an additional 50% of this stat. But the big change was in 3.25, they added a Watcher's Eye mod. A couple of the old Purity mods were extremely strong, and they got removed in part of the rebalances in patch 3.25. But at the same time, Granny Gear Games added 10 to 20% of cold and lightning damage taken as fire while you're affected by Purity of Fire. Oh look, it's exactly the same stat as you get on Sublime Vision. So, if you have 50% of this from a Timeless Jewel, 20% from a Watcher's Eye, and 30% from Sublime Vision, what this means is that any cold or lightning damage your character takes is automatically converted to fire. This means you can completely ignore cold and lightning resist when building your character. Now, I know that a lot of you are probably thinking, why would you spend 1500 Divine Orbs on a Sublime Vision in order to cap out your lightning resistance and cold resistance via a convoluted manner? Well, the benefit that you're getting here is twofold. Firstly, you don't need to make the investment into lightning resistance and cold resistance. Even on the most expensive high budget characters, capping out resistances has an opportunity cost. Maybe it costs you 2 flasks on your Mage Blood. Maybe it costs you something else. Whatever it is, there is an opportunity cost you are paying. With this setup, you don't need to pay it. But probably more important is the way that this interacts with elemental penetration abilities. For example, consider Uberatsuri's Empowered Stormcall. This has lightning penetration. However, when you've got the Tempered by War, Sublime Vision, and Watcher's Eye setup, instead of taking lightning damage from it, you're suffering fire damage. This does not have fire penetration. So this means that your 90% fire resistance can block off almost all of the damage from Uberatsuri's Empowered Stormcall without mattering at all that that ability has lightning penetration on it, because you're not taking lightning damage. That said, you still probably don't want to get hit by Uberatsuri's Empowered Flame Blast, because that penetrates fire damage, and this setup is not going to protect that well against that. Now, there are 17 different versions of Sublime Vision. One version is worth 2 mirrors, and this is the legitimate price of this. Sometimes people list an item for 1.9 mirrors when they actually know that it's only worth 10 chaos. But this is the legitimate price. If you were to list it at 1.8 mirrors, you would find a number of people would ping you quickly, and they would indeed be looking to buy. The legitimate price on this is in the 1.75 to 2 mirrors range. The time I'm recording, it's 1.9. Yesterday, it was 1.7. It sort of oscillates a bit, but this is a very expensive jewel indeed. So, Father's Love. This divination card grants you half a Sublime Vision. When you identify that Sublime Vision, there are 17 different variations that it can be. Now, Sublime Vision can drop from both Uber Elder and also from Uber Shaper. There's also a reason that the Father's Love Divination card, or at least a full set of it, is better than an unidentified Sublime Visions. There have been a number of bugs, I won't go into the detail on it, but basically unidentified Sublime Visions were not safe to buy for an extended period, and as a result, a number of people just will not touch them because they believe that the seller of the jewel knows what it is, and they've picked out any that are good, and they're just selling the ones that they know aren't valuable. So keep that in mind. People will not buy an unidentified Sublime Visions. Either sell 2 copies of Father's Love, or 1 copy of Father's Love, or don't turn it in, or turn it in only if you're going to identify it yourself. All of that out of the way, where does this divination card drop? It drops in Shaper Guardian maps. It's not restricted just to the boss of those zones, and so it is something that you can juice up by any methods that will juice up the drops of tier 16 maps. Now there's a lot of different ways you can go about trying to juice up these maps, and I'll leave those to you to decide. But whatever you do, you're going to want to seriously consider running 8 mod Shaper Guardian maps, and you can pick those up. You can generate those for yourself by running a Maven-oriented atlas, and by using the Cartography Scarab of Corruption. And that way, anytime that a Shaper Guardian map drops for you, it'll be 8 mod. And the other thing that works well there is that Shaper Guardian maps inherently almost always drop with very high quality, and quality is something you otherwise can't apply onto a corrupted map. So that's something if you're interested in doing divination card farming. At the moment, I'm not that convinced that divination card farming is in that good a place. I think it's one of the things that 3.25 really undermined. But if you're looking for a lucky drop that's even rarer than the Apothecary, but that is actually worth more on average per map that you run than the Apothecary, this has just nudged a little bit ahead in the last few days. It actually hasn't on PoE.Ninja, but the prices on the in-game trade market, it is definitely more than 180% the value of the Apothecary right now. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlobs have interesting results, and may you drop the divination cards you deserve.